we're joined by Jim Pan, who is a Director of Product Management for Tableau CRM at Salesforce. We are going to be doing a Smart Transform workshop. So I'm going to take this opportunity actually, while we're still going through this, to just remind everybody, anybody who hasn't already created a dev org to be able to follow this, now's your last chance to do so. We'll give you a couple of minutes to do so. You won't be able to follow through with the exercises today unless you have done so. So as I just kind of go through these slides, if you just quickly click on this link here, not this link here. If you quickly, if you click on this link here, there is a link to create a dev org, to sign up for that and create one over the next few minutes. And then lastly, just a few tips, because we do have some people that are new to data prep, and while Jim is gonna be careful to kind of go at a pace that is accessible for everybody, you may find that certain things might be useful to know beforehand in order to be able to follow along. So I've made a couple of GIFs here. The first one, just in terms of being able to add data in data prep. Okay, so you can either add data from this button here or the icon in the left-hand corner. You then select the objects that you are picking, add into your recipe, and then from here you can select any fields and then click next. So when it comes to that part of the exercise, you should be able to follow that along. I'll move on to joining data. When you want to join one node to the other, for instance, the account node to the opportunity node to the account node. When you hover over, you'll see a plus sign. If you hold that and drag it onto the next node or onto the function, either join or append, it will then pull it together that way. And then from here, you can choose which type of join, and also you can look here to see the common key. There's a plus. You click on the plus, a submenu opens, and from here you can click on transform, amongst other things. And on that transform submenu, these are some of the functions, some of which we'll be using. Custom formula, for instance, edit the attributes, drop in columns, time series transform, or cluster transform. From the transform window, if you want to go back to the actual recipe flow, you've got a collapse function here in the top right-hand corner, and that will then hide the transform menu and bring you back to your recipe. I'll just let it do it one more time so you can see. And there we are. Again, branching works in a very similar way, except you'll see you won't be clicking the plus node here. You'll be looking at a branching icon that kind of comes out just next to the join icon, and from there you can then select branch. I'll let it loop one more time just so you can see. And there we are. We add a branch here. And one more thing: if at any point you get stuck or get a bit confused, or you're unable to keep up during the work, we have provided the JSON. So there's an option for you to kind of move ahead by just uploading the JSON. Of course, you're free to kind of go back in your own time and go over the steps that you have difficulty with. But in order to be able to keep up with the exercise, we've provided the JSON, and that's just a simple matter of clicking on the upload button here. I'll let it go around, selecting the JSON file, open, and just like magic, the whole recipe will appear. One time, I'll let it loop. The upload function is here, this button here, which is highlighted. You can select the JSON file, open, and that then creates the recipe. Okay, that's it from me. I will hand over to Jim.
Thank you so much, Manny. And thanks everybody for coming to this session. You can all hear me all right?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. So let me just get started. I'm going to give you a quick overview of who I am and what we do, and then we'll jump into this presentation. Seems like roughly around 70% of the folks on the call are relatively new to data prep. So I'm hoping to give a bit of an overview of what really makes data prep pop in my mind, beyond all of the normal goodies that you're going to see today with respect to the visual editor and whatnot. So, Smart Transforms. My name is Jim Pan. I'm part of the product management team, and I'm responsible for ML-powered transformation in Tableau CRM. I do want to point out in today's session, I will most likely cover some of the forward-looking future capabilities. If you are exploring, if you're making purchasing decisions, please do so based on existing available capabilities. So smart transforms, what we're really talking about is powerful ML-based transformations as part of the data prep recipes. You don't get that in data flows. It's a recipe-specific thing. And I'm just going to walk through some of the capabilities we have today. So first off, the guiding principle here, we aim to provide a simple ways to provide powerful data transformations. What we're really talking about, what this line really says to me anyways, is that we are trying to target standard business users, maybe tech savvy business users, IT folks, for data administrators who may not necessarily be data scientists, who are into data science, tooling, model management, all of that, but still would like to take advantage of ML power capabilities, and that's who our audience is, and the entire experience that we're trying to build around these smart transforms is really around making that work for that target audience. So first off, clustering, which is what we're going to kick off the build along session with today. We have now automated data segmentation capability in data prep. All you need to do is select a few fields that are relevant for your data, and then you can start segmenting the data based on in fact, leveraging our ML capabilities behind the scene. We create the model for you. You don't have to worry about that. We store it for you. You don't have to worry about that. We retrieve it and apply it on new data each time you run the data prep, and you don't have to worry about that. It's really straightforward. And then the segmentation, of course, comes in. Generally speaking, we talk about segmentation or data clustering. Right away, we think of account segmentation or customer segmentation. Beyond the normal standard marketing-based capabilities, that's exactly where we're going with that. And then what I'm going to show you is, I'm going to start off with what it would look like, it could look like in terms of a white space analysis, in terms of segment comparison, and then we're going to how to build that recipe. Luckily, it's so easy. Even if you've never seen it before, you'll be able to build along with me. So that's one of the key benefits of building it in data prep recipes. Okay, time series forecasting. Now, for those of you that are familiar with the time series capabilities in SACL, we ported it into data prep recipes. Why? So that we can apply additional multipliers, for example, external factors that you can do in the query environment, for example. You now also can persist that into a data set, for example. You can store your forecast month over month. You can compare. You can look back at your previous forecast and compute any kind of factors or anything like that in order to aid your future forecast as well. These are all the things now, because they're part of the data prep, you can take advantage of. And then, of course, sentiment analysis. For those of you that don't know, we have sentiment analysis at your fingertips. It's literally 3 clicks. And I have a little GIF right here. You select the field that you want, you click on the sentiment button, and then you hit apply. That's simple. I can talk more about that later on. It's not the objective of today's session, but I'm more than happy to chat about it and about some of the deep dive capabilities that we have. And if there's enough interest, we can always set up a future session to do a deeper dive into these capabilities. Now, at any point in today's session, if you feel like you want to know more about a particular topic, you hear a keyword and you're not exactly sure what it means, so you can Google it, of course, but you can also just post it in the chat or post it in, I guess, in Slack, and then we'll address them, because I'm sure that if any one of you have a question, probably multiple people will have the same question. So I'd be more than happy to interactively go into those questions and answer them for you live. Okay. So clustering. Before I get into clustering, let me just show you what this would look like. I am going to, in today's session, I'm going to build a recipe to segment accounts. All right. And then in order to do white space analysis, it's a very standard use case. And some of you might be thinking, we do white space analysis today. I just create a grid. I know exactly what my customers are not buying right now. And that's my white space. And you would be absolutely right. That is definitely true. And then you can also do segmentation. I do segmentation today. Industry by industry, by region, by maybe the account size, by certain metrics, and so on, and then you can really easily bucket them up and slice them. That's also absolutely true, right? These are all standard, very normal ways of segmenting your data and then looking for white space, completely reasonable. One of the things that we're hoping to be able to do with clustering is for you to identify certain key metrics, maybe behavioral patterns, buying velocity, whatever that might be, that you think are pertinent, and then use that as a way to suddenly compute a net new way of segmenting those customers. We're not looking to supplant the traditional marketing way of segmenting accounts, for example, or segmenting cases, or segmenting anything like that. What we're saying is this is a supplement. This is a good supplement to provide additional details about about your data that you may not currently be able to readily access. Okay. So let's get right into it. So this is what could happen once you run your cluster analysis. can you guys see this all right? I'm not sure about the resolution. Just want to make sure the resolution is good. You guys all can see.
Thumbs up? I can see it for sure.
Yeah? All right.
Yes.
Cool. All right. For those of you if you have a hard time seeing this, if you feel like it's too small, let me know, because and then we can always zoom in a little bit. So what I have here is this. I have this data. I have my accounts. They're segmented into 3 groups. I specifically left the names here as the default names instead of labeling them with business useful names, so that you could take this exact asset, put it in your org, run it as it is, and then see what you get. And then you can label them as you see fit. So I didn't want to go and change the labeling. That was on purpose. But here what we have is I have 3 different segments: cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3, where my accounts are clustered, and in this chart. And then I broke them down by certain statistics. For example, if you look at cluster 1, we have a large number of accounts. 91% of all of the accounts are in cluster 1. But in terms of average account value, cluster 2 clearly brings in significantly more, and cluster 3 is also significantly more than cluster 1. And so what we're really talking about, and you look at the total lifetime value here of cluster 2 as well as cluster 3, these guys are in essence, they are the lifeblood for this particular demo, the lifeblood of the customers for this company. All right, so they are the high frequency, high volume buyers. They're faithful. We need to treat them with a lot of respect, roll out the red carpet for these guys. Whereas in cluster 1, there's a high volume, small purchases. And if you scan right over here on the right side, I'm kind of jumping a little bit to show the win rate is also very low. The implication is a lot of tire kickers. You could also label it as a tire kicker group. Now, that's what I found in my test org. I have found this big 91% of my customers are tire kickers. Maybe the question could be then, okay, why are we having all these tire kickers, and how do we convert them more effectively? What are we missing? Why are they not sticking around, turning into cluster 2 or 3, and so on? At least this gives me the ability to facilitate that conversation internally at a high level. Of course, then you come down a little bit and you look at this and you say, well, these are the this is product, a list of products on the top, and then the clusters on the left, and it kind of shows you what people are buying, what people are not buying. Certain things people never buy. RV shelters, clearly not a product we really sell that well. right? Whereas in tablets and so on, it seems to be clearly selling really well. Everybody's got different preferences over there, and that's fine, right? This is a sample data, so bear with me. Yours is probably going to be different, but you could do that. Where this becomes particularly powerful, because at that level, you could say, well, let's do a holistic analysis and come up with some marketing plans and whatnot, market in terms of customer outreach or maybe some bundling options, whatever it is you come up with. But another thing that I'm trying to showcase was, what if you have the ability, let's say you have the ability to say, you know what, given a particular account, I'm going to go right into manufacturing, just focusing on specific vertical. We have okay. Here is the segment. You know what? I'm going to keep my eyes on the presentation and not on the questions. I'll deal with the questions in spots here and there. Okay, so this is what we have. Segment total. In cluster 2, in the manufacturing, these are their buying preferences, and clearly they buy a lot of the Quintara Pro laptop. All right, and this is really great. And for the sake of argument, suppose I am a salesperson. I'm about to reach out to Gross Inc. because I need to have, this is about my quarterly business review with these guys to see how they're doing and whatnot. I just pull that up, right? And I say, hey, look, compare to your peers. Everybody else is buying these tablet mini pros and tablet minis except these guys. Why is that? Why is it that the Gross Inc doesn't buy it? Now, if I know why they don't buy it, they just don't like it. The fingers are big and they don't like these little tablets, or maybe the font is too small, whatever that reason might be. If I know why, that's okay. But if there's no clear reason on why they don't buy it when their peers obviously do, you know, peers in the same cluster, in the same industry, in the same region and whatnot, then that gives me another point of having that conversation, carrying out that conversation to understand what's going on. Maybe they just never even knew that we sold this. Maybe we never came up in conversation because they tend to go with what they know, and they didn't know that we provided these products. So as an example, Machine's not here to tell you, by God, put on the offer on tablet mini, they will definitely buy. That's not what Machine is telling you. Machine is telling you what other people are buying so that you can make that conscious decision. You're still in the driver's seat on deciding what to pitch to your customer. So that's what we're going to try to get to today. Okay. Before we do that, so there we go. So I'm going to show you, this is the final example. I'm just going to show you this final example, but we're going to build it fresh. Look at this, super simple. Everything fits on one page. For those of you guys that's been building recipes, you know, I've seen what real world recipes can look like, and they can get really big. So this project here is fairly simplistic, and I will show you exactly how we get there. Okay. All right, so I'm about to start the build along session. All right, if you are ready, it would be great if you can pull up your org and be ready to create a recipe, and then put the presentation on another monitor so that you could follow along. Okay. All right. First, I click on that create recipe. All right, in here, I can start adding input data. There are two ways to add input data. I can click on this blue button, or I can click on this plus button. They're exactly the same. Either way, what they do is they bring up this modal that allows me to see it. Okay, now in my example, I am going to start off with adding account. So I have data sync enabled, and they're all under SFDC local. There are a lot of objects here, so I'm going to just come over here and search. And then I find my account in the SFDC local for data sync. My God, there's a lot of fields, and I'm not going to use that. So I just deselect all of them and pick only the fields I want. As you can imagine, the more fields you try to pull in and carry through the entire ETL process, even if you don't need them, and if you don't need them in output data set, it's just going to slow things down. So it's always good to evaluate exactly whether you need all of the fields. It's easy to come in and say, oh, I need all 500 fields, 800 fields, but maybe you don't. So it's something that worthwhile to evaluate. So for now, I'm going to click ID, name, I'm not going to search, just industry and country. There you go. Just like that. I have now an input. Okay. And I'm going to do the same for opportunity. I do the search here just because I have so many things that I'm searching. There's still quite a bit. Oh, there you go. Here's opportunity. Again, 46 fields, just all selected by default. I don't need that many. So I'm just going to deselect all of that. Go with ID, account ID, name, stage, amount, close date. And in my example, I want to know if it's closed and if we want it. Okay. Many things that you guys probably also care about, lead source, type, and all that. You can definitely pull them in as you see fit. And that's, but this just want to show that as an example. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to start calculating going to start calculating the win rate, all right, by this account. So what I'm going to do is the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a filter right here. Okay, let me just stop that in case you didn't see it. Literally, I press it because you have to press on this plus. You can't press on this green button. You have to click on this plus, and then when you do that, all the different options are available. You have transform, filter, aggregate. And if you have a discovery, you get discovery, predict, join, append, and then creating an output node. And that's where we're going to go, is a filter. Okay. And we're filtering on opportunity. So I'm just going to say close is true. Okay. Now, for those of you that are looking at the very first time, if you happen to be filtering on a categorical field, like say industry or region or city or whatever, the data that you're seeing here is going to be based on whatever's in the sample rows. Okay, it's only whatever's in the sample rows. If it's possible, if your data set has lots of different values, that they're not all represented in your sample data preview here. And so you always can manually type in a value like this, hello world, and then just add it in. That's it, just like that. In my situation, I don't really want that, so I just so I just did that. I don't really need hello world. I just wanted to do true. That is very important because I think a lot of people are not sure how to add new text values in to a categorical filter, and that's how you do that. Okay. Now I have done that. Now you know that these are the opportunities that we have won. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run an aggregate. Here I'm going to go with count of rows, average of amount, sum of amount, and then I'm going to run the group by to say, I want to group it by account. Super straightforward. Now I know a number of opportunities, the average deal size, and the total deal size by account. Okay, and I'm just going to leave it like that. This is great. What I want to do is run off another filter here. And then here, what I'm going to do is say 1 is true. This tells me what I actually want, and this is really great. Then the next thing, maybe I'll drag that back a little bit. Here we are, aggregate this data, doing exactly the same thing. I'm going to go count of rows, average amount, sum of amount, and then group it by account ID. Pretty straightforward stuff, I want to say, but I'm going to take a quick pause here to see who needs more time to get to this spot. Anybody showing hands or anything like that, or how we feel?
No comments in the Slack channel as of yet, so I think we're okay.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, for those of you that are looking at the very first time, you can probably start saying to yourself, yeah, this is pretty easy, but man, this is going to be hard to read. So, and you'll be right. So I like to do this. I like to come in here and say, well, close is equal to true, so that I know exactly what's in there. When I'm reading it, it's easy to see. I don't go, oh yeah, you know, the filter below the other filter. No. This would just be a lot easier. And then 1 equal to true, it helps me read exactly what I'm doing over here, right? And then aggregating, what am I aggregating? Maybe I just want to display, aggregate ops by account, okay. And then I can also add a little description, right? Maybe count of rows, average amount, sum amount. Just keep it nice and simple. And then that becomes available and I can hover my mouse over. I don't need to click on anything. It just makes it easy for me to track it eventually. Okay. Now, I can also go through this process. You'll probably notice this right now. If you look at this, the names here are rows, average amount, sum of amount. If you click on the top one, you would expect them to also have the same values. If you join them together, it could be a little bit confusing. So, okay, I don't want to launch right now. Okay, great. So then the next thing I'm going to do is name change, right? Just to keep it easy for me to read exactly what I'm doing, okay? For the sake of argument, this is what I'm going to do. Come over here and see that? To do a name change, let me back up. I have to add a transform node. And in the transform node, I select the column that I want, and then I click on this edit attribute, okay? Once I click on that, I can say, I can change it to whatever it is that I want. For example, I can say 1 rows, okay? And then just to keep it easy to understand, 1 count rows. And you can do the same thing for each one of these as you see fit. 1 average amount and 1 average amount. I'm kind of winging it a little bit. It's different from the book that or the doc that I wrote, but the essence is the same. The ability is to go and change these field names. And why that is relevant is this. Check this out. I'm going to draw. Okay, so, you know, in a drawing, there's always a left and a right, left and a right. The way drawing work interactively in a graph here is you drag the right side onto the left. And that's how that works. Drag the right side onto, you don't drag the left side to the right. If you, whatever you're dragging is automatically the right side. So just, you have to keep that in mind. Whatever you're dragging to join is the right side. And this is how you're going to do this. See this plus sign here? I click on that and I pull it right over top. And then I let go of the mouse and I move my mouse to join or a pen. But in this case, I want to join. You can also just drag it over without letting go. Just move your mouse down to the join section and then magic just happens. Pretty great. And they figured out what I needed to join on, which is also pretty fantastic. Now I could go ahead and change the API name here to say 1, so that maybe I didn't need to change the API name, but this would have been easy. So there we go. Now, in a join situation, all of the fields on both sides are automatically incorporated. You can always come in here and say, you know what, I don't really need that account ID twice. I'm going to get rid of that. And I'm going to, whatever it is you want to get rid of. For now, we're going to actually use these fields, and I'm going to leave that as it is. Okay, now we've aggregated close true. We've aggregated close 1 is true. We've renamed the fields. We've dragged them on, and then now they are able to join. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a transform here. You guys all following along?
Jim,
well?
Can you just Jim, can you show again how to drag and join? We had a question on that.
Totally. In fact, thank you. I will do that right now. Check this out. Undo. And undo that one too. And then keep undoing. I could do that. So I wanted to show you the undo because I think it's really cool. But yeah. Okay. To join two sides, I drag the node that I'm going to count as the right side onto the node that I'm going to consider to be the left side. So all I do is drag it over, let it go, click on the join. Now the join panel shows up and I get to pick the join keys. Which keys do I want to join these two data sets? What's on the left? On the left side, for example, it's called aggregate ops by account. On the right side, it's the transform. What kind of key do I want to join them on? By default, you probably noticed that the join type is lookup. We do have left, we have right, we have inner, we have outer, we have all kinds of different join types. If you're not exactly sure the difference between lookup and left join, you should look it up before you start switching, because left join includes all matching rows. So, and similar with like inner join, all that stuff. So the idea is that if you have multiple matches, instead of picking the first one or picking the right one, it would just select all of them. You will have a row explosion. And if that's what you want, that's totally okay. But if this is a fundamentally different behavior, that does not exist. So left join, all that, these don't exist in data flows. In data flow, the augment is by default lookup. And that's why that's the default behavior when you're coming over from data flow. It's very comfortable. I just want to point out that there is a difference in behavior there. Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna change this to 1. Great, easy to understand. Are we good to go next, Ricky?
I think so. Let me just double check. Yeah, I think we're good.
Oh, cool. All right. So I have that join. I'm going to run a transform because now I'm about to do a formula calculation. For those of you that are familiar with data flows, you come in, here's your computer expression, you go and write all your cool stuff. It's very reasonable. What I'm going to do instead is this. I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Let's just create a custom formula. Right? And then say I want to do rows 1 divided by rows. And I'm going to look at that and say that's a numeric. I will give it a scale. Scale is the number of digits to the right of the decimal place. Okay, that's what I'm doing. And then here I'm going to call this win rate by rows, for example. That's it. Simple, right there. Another thing I can also do. Oh yeah, over select. Default value 0 is very important because you probably noticed this. If it doesn't have any, it has 0, 1, it comes up as null. And the null divided by anything is still null. So I set up a default value of 0 so that I don't end up with a null win rate because you didn't win anything. Win rate is 0. Totally cool. All right. The next one could be, let's do one more. Switch to columns. Okay. I'm going to really slow this down in case you're seeing this for the very first time. I'm going to go sum of amount here, right? Divided by sum of amount, that's total, right? That's what I got. So close, and then this is the ones closing 1. Numeric, I'm going to change the scale to 2 because I'm trying to do a percentage here. And I'm going to set the default value to 0 in case there are nulls in place because we don't have those. Then I'm going to say win rate by amount. The API names in the workbook and the API name that I'm showing are probably going to be a little bit different simply because I'm kind of winging it a little bit with my naming, but the concept is exactly the same. So don't get too hung up on the API name in the book not matching. But if you were to download the JSON and you upload it, it will work correctly. So far, so good?
Yeah, there's a couple of questions, but we're taking them in Slack. So I think hopefully everybody is still with us. I can see several people are typing, but let's just go along. I will stop you if there's anything urgent. Thanks.
Sweet. Perfect. So now you see this? So what I did is I calculated at the account level, a whole bunch of different numbers, and then I calculated the win rate, and it's all from opportunity, but it's not particularly useful, right? I'm going to join that back to account. So that's what I did. I just dragged the right side onto the left side, and then there we now made a join there, and then I'm checking. Oh, look. Magically, we picked the right fields. So we have account ID on the left, matching to the account ID on the right, which is exactly what we want it to be. And I'm going to call this ops because this information that came from opportunities. Okay. And then I'm just going to look at this. That's it. Now, this may look a little bit different from what you have, or it may look exactly the same. It really depends. I like to drag things around because I like the left side to maintain the same, I want to say a y-axis. Preferably they don't go changing. To me, this is my own personal preference. It's easier for me to know which one is left, which one is right. The one that's higher is on the left side, the one that's lower is on the right, and so on and so forth. Just in that way for me to keep track of information. But it's just personal preference there. Calculated field without adding another edit attribute. At this point, no, but they will coming. It will coming. Oh yeah, hey, Ricky answered already. You're absolutely right. That's coming. That's coming. Okay, so next step. Now that we have all this information,
Jim, there is a question around. Could you please help on how the transformation works? I'm not sure what is meant with this question, but it's been posted twice now. So hopefully we can get a little bit more clarification on that question. Let's see if we get functionality of transform.
Yeah. Functionality of transform. Let's take a look. I'll give you a quick overview of the transform capabilities in place. Okay. Obviously, there's the custom formula. You can create a datetime field, like a now field and whatnot. Custom formula, there's quite a bit of capabilities that are in place. All of the string functions are here. If you want to call, all of the string functions are here. All the number functions are here. ABS, like absolute values and all that stuff. Date functions now, you want to do date calculations, you can do all of that in here. And my personal favorite, coalesce and case. Pretty much all you need really in a lot of situations. And then the columns are displayed right here. All your dimensions are grouped in one section, measures in one section, and then you can pick your output. The outputs are, there's a date and date time concept. There's a bit of complexity around that, so I recommend you read it up on our help and training. But other than that, yeah, that's basically it. Super straightforward. In one transform node, you can add as many steps. So the way I'm calling these things is that this is a node. This blue thing is a node, and all of these things are steps. You can create as many steps as you want. There's no performance implication between one transform node with 100 steps or 10 transform nodes with 10 steps each. It doesn't make a difference on the back end. Okay, so it just depends on what makes sense for you. I like organizing them in a way like this, for example, because I can say, oh, this transform is calculate win rates. And I like to group them in a way that helps me say, oh, I need to make some changes to win rate calculation. I just go there. That's the one that I go. And if I wanted to add another one to say I need to calculate attrition rates or velocity of changes over time, I create another one right here and then just keep doing it. This way I like to keep them separate. Just for me, it's easy to track. But it can obviously end up with lots of different transforms. So in your case, if you happen to have really complex recipes that you don't want to have so many different transform nodes, manage them however you like. I have seen customers where they put in like 150 steps in one transform node. So preferences, I guess. It's because they don't edit it in UI. They just, I mean, I guess they build it, but then what they do is they go and download this JSON and then pull it up. Let me see if I can. Woohoo, lots of different things here. But here's my JSON, right? Just like a data flow JSON, you have all these different JSON in places, and then you will have all your different. We have all these edit attributes. You know, they just get at it. You know, we're trying to get you to, you know, drag and drop, point and click. You know, all UI and no JSON, and that is still the whole concept. But at the end, behind the scene, if you really wanted to, you always come here. You know, if you really want some pain, you know, edit the JSON by hand and see if it works. But I don't recommend it. It's easy to make mistakes. All right. Other transforms. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
There's several more questions, but I know we have like 28 minutes left. So I feel
going
like
too slowly. All right. Well, tell you what. Let me come back to some of these questions, and then how about let me get through the clustering portion, and I'll come right back. How's that? That will help me because I can then tell my boss I actually did the session, and then everybody's happy. But then I also want to make sure I address your questions because a lot of these things I think are basic usability. And for first-time users, if you haven't been doing this, it could seem a little bit daunting, but it's not. It's completely super easy. So I just want to point this out. I also came from the data.
We can address them in the Slack as well. So.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. So what I'm going to do next is this. Okay. Actually, let me do a recap. We've calculated the win rates for accounts. Okay, we've calculated all deals and all that stuff, and then I'm joining them back into onto the account data so that we have the output data there with respect to all of those aggregated information from opportunities. As you can probably imagine, if I could do this from opportunity, you can do it from cases. You can do it from opportunity line items. You can do it from whatever it is you need to build out your list of stats. Totally makes sense, right? And so this is just an example to show you that you're not limited to whatever fields are on the account side. Okay, in this case, what I'm going to do is now that I have all this information available to me, all I do is I click on this cluster. So this section right here is the smart transforms. Smart transforms don't always show up. For example, if I pick a number, then you can still run time series and then clustering, but there's no more detect sentiment because that doesn't make sense. Same thing with predict missing value, right? And so if you wanted to do this, you just go ahead, and these are the options. We talk about detect sentiment, we talk about predicting missing value, time series forecasting, and cluster. They're all right here. Now, I know if we're talking about the rest of the features, there's so many here. I recommend just having a quick look and then see what makes sense for you. Extremely self-explanatory. And in fact, every single transform comes with like this tidbit and tells you more information, allows you to click on learn more and go to help and training directly. Okay, so back to what we're talking about here. I'm going to use rows, which is the total number of closed total number of deals per account, for example. I'm going to go with, actually, you know what, it's painful. Win. There you go. That's more like it. I got the two win rates. I'm going to get the amount. So we have the average deal amount, and we have the sum of amount, and then just, you know, whatever it is you see fit, right? And that you want to use. I did, in my example, rename these fields, all right, to lifetime value, account lifetime value, average deal size, deal count, and you use the edit attribute exactly as I showed you earlier to make those changes. But I just ran clustering, right? Literally, I just click on that, select my field, and then I said, let's go back one more time because that was too easy. That doesn't make any sense. This is impossible. It must be a magic trick. It's not. So what we have is I accepted the default of the number of clusters, which is to say I'm going to calculate 3 clusters, 3 segments, and you're going to go and segment this data based on the fields that I have chosen here. And that's it. We just go and run it behind back behind the scene calculation. Now, for those of you who say three, who said three? What if I want more? What's the best number here? That is coming up in the next release. We are rolling out the capability for you to say, find me the optimal number of clusters and just figure it out for me. We also give you the ability to guide it to say, you know what, find me the optimal, but I don't want 48. Don't come back with a 45 clusters. That's just not useful for me. So I'm going to guide it to say around 7, maybe a 10, plus minus 25%. Go with 10, and then find me something optimal between those. We will then use silhouette score to determine the optimal cluster count, and then we'll generate that data back for you. Okay, but that's upcoming. That's not here just yet. For now, you will have to experiment a little bit. Okay, so that's that. And then yeah. So let me just go and apply. The end. I scroll over to the right. Check that out. Cluster 1, 2, 3. Oh, this is not real data. Don't believe it. You have to run the recipe because this is the preview data only. Remember, the preview only shows what, I think 2,000 rows or something like that. And you come in with a data set with 30 million row data set. The output of that cluster is going to be really different from based off of 2,000. So this is preview purpose only, is not to be dependent on. Don't look at this and say cluster 1. That's not cluster 1. Newman is cluster 3. This is purely for preview purpose only. And of course, the reason why you would do such a thing, let me see. The reason why you would do such a thing is so that you can then subsequently, if you're going to say, you know what, I want to calculate some stats. I want to know the maximum rows and minimum rows and maybe the maximum total amount and the minimum total amount and some amount, whatever it is that you want to do, right? Some stats that you want to come up with, and you say, I want to group it by cluster. You can then come up with your cluster benchmark as you see fit. You calculate your whatever it is you need to do. You see what I mean? Okay, maybe I don't want that. Maybe I just want the averages, right? You can do it. Again, you have that full flexibility. Maybe you want to do that. Maybe you want to do this. Maybe you want to do average sum of amount, average win rate by cluster, by rows, for example. We put the power in your hands. Put you in the driver's seat. You can decide how you want to put together this information for yourself so that you can also use it to compare to your data. Now, again, this is preview purpose only. This is not, don't look at this data. You have to run the recipe to make it work. And if I were to use this, this is different from the workbook. I just want to show you this. You can obviously go ahead and write that into a data set. And once you do, you can then compare that, okay? For now, I'm going to just stop that. The undo works really handily. Then I create an output. Okay, and I'm going to call this the Smart Transform Clustered Accounts, I believe that's what it's called. And for now, I'm just going to leave that as it is. In your example, I think I asked you in your workbook to put it in your example app, as I had done previously for the output data set, right? Because I've already done that. I don't want to give this API name confusion and all that stuff. That's why I'm leaving it in my private app. But I recommend you put in the right app in the first place. So I don't have to worry about it. The clustering can works on both dimensions and measures, and dimensions are one-hot encoded into ones and zeros, additional columns to be used in clustering. We can talk a little bit more about that in the workbook. I talk about I do cover what the implications of using one-hot encoding for dimensional values, which is the same dimension, the same values, the column with the same values, or the rows with the same values are likely to be in the same bucket, so to speak. Because, for example, let's say a state, New York, Texas, California, Arizona, they are very similar to each other when they all have the same value. So if a row of data is from New York, another row of data is from New York, they are going to be exactly the same. They have the shortest distance as a result. Therefore, they are going to be grouped together. California is all going to be grouped together. Texas is going to be all grouped together. Now, if that's what you want, that's perfectly fine. But if that's not what you want to slice across all different regions, but and purely categorize them based on behavioral patterns, based on measures, for example, that you can calculate, then I would recommend looking at exactly what you're trying to accomplish and determine whether a categorical field actually will contribute to your segmentation or not. Here's an example. For those of you that work with international companies across multiple countries, would you ever segment North American companies along with the Japanese companies in one place? Sounds almost crazy, right? And the reason why you wouldn't do that is because they will have different behavioral patterns, different buying preferences, different everything. They're different markets. You would filter your data to say North America or United States and run your clustering there. And then you will filter the rest of your data and say Japan, different market, different behavioral patterns, different preferences, cluster those by itself, as opposed to including the country and then run across both of them. You wouldn't necessarily do that. So as a best practice, you need to think through exactly what it is you're trying to do and think through whether it makes sense to have the data all in one place, or you need to do a bit of filtering so that your data could be a bit more granular to the areas that you're zooming in on. Okay. All right. So that is that for section B, I believe. Are we running out of time? Oh my God. How much time do I have left? I don't know. Am I online? Is anybody listening?
You're online. You've
Yes.
got about 20 minutes.
Oh, okay, great. Perfect. All right. Well, the next section is going to be super straightforward. Let me just show you exactly what I'm talking about. I am going to, by this point, I have clustered the accounts. They have now a label for those accounts. Cluster 1 includes and so on. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in opportunity line item. Okay, I don't need all the fields. I'm just going to go opportunity, product ID, maybe quantity, total price. It's good enough, right? Probably good enough. I have that. I'm going to drag it down. I'm going to add, I could do that. Or another way to run a join is simply to click on this plus button and then click on the join right here. And then it will also pop up this thing. I have a preference to usually click on the same path, but a lot of different ways to make a join. And then I'm going to go product 2. And the reason why I want product 2 in my example here is because I want to get to the product family. What I want is product name, code, and I also want to get to the product family. So then I can use product family to make determination. For those of you where your product list is so big, I have 1,000 SKUs, Jim. It's not going to work. Maybe you have 20 families. Then it's easier, product families. Maybe it's a little bit easier to use that as a way to filter down the data, or you can just run 1,000 SKUs, whichever you prefer. Either way it works. But the objective of doing this was so that I can use this. Now I have opportunity line item. How do I mark these guys with the cluster label from account? So this is how I do it. You see this? See that? That branching button. I hover my mouse over there. There's the 2 arrow circle. I just drag that onto this join. And then I click on this join option. And that's it. I here to come and make sure that it's opportunity matching opportunity ID. That's great. I can just, maybe I get rid of that, keep it nice and clean. And I don't actually need the entire opportunity list of information because what I really want joining in from opportunity is just the account name. So I don't need the rest of the stage. But if I want to close one, I could always incorporate that as I see fit, right? So for now, I'm just going to take that out, because what I'm really trying to pull in is the account ID. So that here's where I run the cluster. I can drag that in to join. and it's joining automatically on account ID, and then I'm just going to call it account, and then coming in looking at the account portion, I don't really need all these different things here. I don't really need all those different stats. I just get rid of them directly from the join. What I do want is cluster. Okay. Let's drag that down so that it looks a little bit more pretty. Then I create an output node. Before I do anything else, let's take a look at this. This is still opportunity line item. It gives me an opportunity line item ID, all of the product, all the opportunity information. But it also loops into, tells me what account each one is associated with, and therefore what cluster that account is associated with. And then by consolidating this, I now know the purchase preferences or purchase kind of characteristics for each of the clusters. I can run this in aggregation in data prep, or I could run this in SACL or in query to slice and dice the data further to understand maybe cluster 1 has a tendency to buy in Q2. Maybe cluster 3 has a tendency to buy the last 5 days of Q4, for example. So the idea is that I now have the ability to do this because I have connected those two streams of data. So smart transforms clustered op products. For example, it just doesn't look very pretty, does it? This is where you start dragging things around to make it look a little bit more pretty. And say, okay, great, I'm going to drag it down by 1. And for those of you that are wondering, I don't know why Chrome and Zoom for me just doesn't work great. And so my computer turns on like a jet engine. And so I actually run a fan literally right beside my computer, try to cool this thing down. So sometimes it runs a little hot and it's a little bit slow. But normally it's okay. So here we go. It's starting to look a little bit prettier. Okay. That is clustering. Okay. I know we're running a little bit short on time here. Time series is so simple. You literally just point and click. And the instruction set, in fact, I think it's like a six-step instruction in the book and the workbook because it's so straightforward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that's it. 6. It's like a 6. It's so straightforward. It will be. Maybe we'll talk about that. Maybe on a separate session. Maybe you can try it out yourself, and then we can come back to that, and then we can follow up on Slack as well. I'm going to take a quick pause here and take a look at the questions to see if we can answer them. Are there any unanswered questions? Because I think you guys are the hosts are doing great. Oh,
there was
fantastic
one
question
that I
about time
just tagged you on.
Oh, sorry. What? You
Sorry,
just tagged me?
Yeah, I just tagged you in one around the clustering algo model remove common stop words, or is it the data used as is?
Clustering.
Text call.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Clustering is not text. We're not talking about. This is not a natural language algorithm. We're not doing TF-IDF. If you're thinking, oh, are we doing TF-IDF and then using that as a way to compute some sort of no, that's not what we're doing at all, right? We're not looking for related words to clustering. We're not running clustering on free-form text like we're doing TF-IDF or something like that. Completely not. Therefore, there's no stop word removal or anything like that. What this is literally, give me 1 second. I think I gave a presentation earlier. And here is, let me just pull this up. We run k-means. Okay, we run k-means algorithm. This is the clustering. Clustering is basically what we're saying is looking at statistics, group them together in very similar fashion. There are different ways to run clustering. We're talking about k-means. There's LDA, there's bisecting k-means, Gaussian mixture model, power iteration. In our situation, we specifically implement the k-means for high volume. There's also k-mode and k-midoid, but that's not what we're doing here. We're focused on k-means for the high volume. K-mid, for example, is a little bit slow for a larger data volume, and k-mode is the same problem. All right. So once you get into stop word removal and stuff like that, I believe what you're looking for is feature extraction for text, more like a TF-IDF or something like that. That's not what we're doing. Nothing to do with it whatsoever. So make sure we make that very, very clear. Okay.
Feedback was it's crystal clear. So thanks for explaining.
Perfect. This is in fact the third time I heard about this this week. So I just want to make sure we're all super clear on what clustering means in this context. So clearly we need to do better on the documentation. Okay. Next question. Time series. Yes, it's coming. Super important. We had a conversation. I already spec'd it out. Team is developing on it. We're hoping to deliver it. It won't come in the very next release, but we're looking to do this hopefully in a couple of releases, in 2 releases more specifically, because it's not easy to do this in a distributed fashion, distributed environment to do that, but clearly we need to. The reason why this was not such a big deal before, so what we did is this. For those of you that are wondering about time series, in Sacco, you have the ability to run a partition. We looked up the usage patterns, and less than 1% of the orgs that are using, or all of the occurrences, query occurrences using partition, there was less than 1% of that. So the question is, do we need to spend time on partitioning? And then at that time, we made a product decision to say, forget partitioning. We don't need it. Less than 1% of the customers use it. Who cares? Turns out that's because in Sacco, you obviously have the ability to filter the data down or use a security predicate to restrict how much data you see. So then the forecast is specifically relevant for each of the viewer based on whatever their filters or their access are. Whereas on data prep, we need to have access to the entire data set. And this is where it gets kind of complex. If you want to forecast by account and you have 1 million accounts, we need to run 1 million forecasts for each of the accounts, right? And that's why it's not an easy problem to solve, but we know it's worthwhile solving. So we're working on that. Make that really clear. It is definitely coming.
Great. I think that's it for questions right now. And I think we have about 10 minutes left. So yeah.
Okay. Any other questions that come up? Okay, let me take a quick stop. Actually, who here? I guess I'm wondering if there's a way to do a show of hands or something like that. Who here had been able to download the package zip as part of the workbook, or the JSON from the workbook?
Few people said I did. Yeah.
Who knows how to install package zip, or who doesn't know how to install package zip? Rather. Okay, so it's very important. I included a package zip that includes the finalized recipe, along with the finalized recipe as well as the basically it looks like this. It's a package XML. You know, if you don't know how to deploy, you're not sure how to do this. You know, let's talk on Slack. I'll walk you through the process. For most admins, I think it's fairly standard practice. You do whatever you do as you see fit, but you can deploy this. I didn't want to give you a JSON for dashboards, for example, because dashboards obviously have hard dataset ID links or IDs in the dashboard. That's not going to work for you, and this is why I decided to go with a package zip as a simple way to distribute something, and you can just install it in your org. It will create the app. You will create the 2 dashboards. You will create the recipe. All you need to do is, once you install it, run the recipe, and it will materialize those 2 output data sets, and then your dashboards will start working. Now I'm going to stick around on Slack even after the session. If you want to take this opportunity to go and install that in your org, maybe a sandbox or wherever, because it's isolated, right? It's in its own app. You can always delete it later on as you see fit. I recommend you take this. What I have here is only using standard objects, accounts, opportunity, opportunity line item and product two, and only using standard fields. So as long as they are part of your data sync, they should work. I would recommend you try to install them and run them and see if they work for you. And if they don't, I will be on Slack monitoring it so that I can help you get through that so that you can get it working. And then you have a working version that you can then go and tweak as you see fit. Okay, I highly recommend you doing that right now because I'm freely available. I'm dedicated this time right now. Otherwise, you have to email me or log a case, or you call me and I ask you to log a case. So it's better to do this. Oh, package.
I posted a blog that go over deployment techniques, and part of it actually has how to deploy a managed package. So hopefully amazing. That should give some guidance to people.
Okay. The way I typically do it is that, yeah, no, that's totally true. For those of you that wonder, it's like, Jim, I called you already. Why don't you just look into my problem? And it's because we are not allowed. You have to log a case, provide approval for us to look into things, then we can go. Otherwise, I get in trouble with audit and I lose my job. So that's it's a situation I don't touch. So always good to have. Trust is number one. It's very important that your access and your data is safeguarded and nobody has access to that. And so we do take that very seriously. And that's why I will ask you to log a case if you want us to troubleshoot into anything into your orgs.
All right. I think we have 5 more minutes, so I don't know if there's any other questions. Put them in the Slack.
Changes in TCRM and VS Code that I don't know, but I will follow up. Skip Saul is the product manager responsible for the whole developer experience, and I believe it's feasible, but it's not something that I'm familiar with. So I will follow up with Skip and get back to you. Yeah. I'm gonna just be honest. I don't know, I will follow up with Skip and get back to you. Oh, sure. So
should be possible.
Let me just show you how I deploy things. I'm going to use a different org. 1 second. I'm just going to use a different org. And this is my another demo org. I have all these shared demo orgs, and sometimes a little bit afraid to touch things because I don't want other people getting upset at me for messing up their demo orgs. Who's ever done this? You say, oh yeah, I'm gonna go do a demo. You go to a particular page, you go, wait a minute, layout's all changed. Who did this? Oh, Jim. There you go. And then everybody gets very upset. So what I do is in Workbench, I come over here, click on migration, I click on deploy. That's what I do. This is not the only way. All right, you can obviously do it in a lot of different ways, but this is how I do it. Migration, deploy, choose file. And then in my case, it's called Summer, a Smart Transform, Summer 21, package zip right there. Open, and it's going to tell you a whole bunch of different, I need to roll back on error, run a local test because I'm deploying in prod. And then I just click on next. And then it will tell me, are you sure you want to do this? Yes, I do. And then I go ahead and run deploy, and that's it. If you're not sure if this is what you're ready to go, you can always use the check only option just to validate it, and then it won't make any changes. Okay. I've already done this, but this is why, because the file itself is pretty small. And what I have done once I've installed it is it looks exactly like this. There's my somewhere in here, I have a Smart Transform app, example app. There you go. Only if I can go into the app itself, eh? Here you go. That's what gets installed. It's exactly the same that you saw earlier in the other app. That's what I did. Of course, from there and on, what you can do is create this into a template. Once you have have it built out properly, you can create a template, and then other people can then create apps from it. So that if you want multiple people to experiment with it, you can say, okay, don't touch mine. Don't touch mine. This is the master one that we're going to leave it as it is. And just come over to your own thing. I'm just going to actually let's take a look at all items, templates, and I'm going to Smart Transform. I'm going to decouple it. Okay, great. And then I'm going to refresh this one. Now you have this app, right? You can go ahead and create a template just like this. And when you do, it will package up your recipe, your dashboards, your data sets, everything. And then from there on, it will allow people to be able to create a Smart Transform example app just like that. And so that's what I have done here, is that if I wanted to create a net new app, I now have the ability to say, okay, give me that Smart Transform app. It's right here. So then you can just create a template and it's nice and easy, just like that. Now, it's not very pretty because this is just an example, but as you can tell, this is exactly what you can do in your org so that multiple people can experiment with clustering and Smart Transforms. Wow, some questions here. Oh, Workbench. There was some Workbench question there. Give me 1 second. I'm going to close that. Go back to my other org. How do I know? Well, it kind of, I guess it kind of tells you which user you're logged in. But at the end of the day, what you could always do is log out and log in. Now, if you don't do this, I highly recommend it. I keep multiple profiles around for every single different thing that I use, because this way I don't worry about mixing sessions or cookies or anything like that. I just try to keep it completely separate. And so the idea is that this way I don't have to worry about it, but you can also decide, oh, it's a sandbox environment and of a particular version, and this is how you log in. Or you can log in with username, password, or whether you decide whether is it a sandbox, is it a prod, the login URL is going to be a little bit different. How I got it out of the system? I got it out of the system by creating a change set and then retrieving it from Workbench. I think this is fairly standard Salesforce usage, but you can probably look it up if you don't mind.
Have a look at the blog that I posted around deployment techniques. It's covering all the things around how do you actually deploy from one environment to another, including how to create this package, what assets you can package and all these kind of things. So have a look at that one. It should answer all of these questions.
Thank you, Ricky. I will listen to Ricky because I actually don't know all the normal ways of doing it. I just have this one path that I do. So yeah.
All right, I think we have time for just a couple more questions, and then it's time to kind of close today's session. But any plan for step reordering in transform nodes? Probably some drag and drop, maybe.
Yeah, not yet, but it's a great idea because a lot of people have been talking about it. One of the challenges that the challenge that we're trying to deal with is if you have some dependency and you didn't know about it and you're dragging things around, then and then that breaks the API name dependency. That'll be a little bit weird, right? So, how do we handle these? Are some of the things that we're trying to think through, and then also balance along with some of the other capabilities that we're trying to bring in. One of the example is in data flow. You know how you can just start off SFDC digest with an object, whether you have data sync or not. But you can't do that in a recipe. You have to have data sync available. So we're working on bringing that same capability into data prep, where even if it's not in data sync, we should still be able to use it. And so how do we get around to doing that? So in terms of balancing prioritization, these are some of the things that I just want to share some context around what's important and what the teams are focused on. I do have an in-depth deep dive into clustering, underlying algorithm, how we calculate the centroids, where the models are stored, and everything else. If there's enough interest for that, we can always host a future session to do a deep dive into this. If you guys are signing up for learning days, next week, I will be doing a deep dive on learning days for TCRM on the Academy. So that's also a good option there if you want to do that. Today was a build along. Next week is going to be the deep dive into the underlying technology.
We'll be posting a link to that in the group so everybody can sign up for that. So just I'll find the link and make sure to post it.
Awesome. And I think